I was getting busy fast because I went the extra mile. I did extra things.
Robin, you were featured in 2023's America's Best list for your sales production for doing over 268 transactions and over 91 million in volume, ranking you as the number 5 team in the state of Minnesota. Appreciate you joining.
I started selling real estate full-time January 1st, 2001. My very first sale, this lady called me and she was a single mom. She had recently divorced and she said, could you check with the sellers if it would be possible for me to stay overnight in the house? So I called the sellers. They said, oh, she can go in the house. And so I went in the house, took in an air mattress bed for her, an air mattress bed for her daughter. I put some milk and some juice in the refrigerator so that when she got there, she had a place to sleep. I went back to the office and they're like, are you crazy? Realtors don't do that. And I'm like, I do that. I did it my way. Word spreads fast. You take good care of people, they tell people. She was awesome. She went the extra mile. It's just going the extra mile. I mean, this is why 71% of my business is from people that I have taken care of before or they've referred me to somebody. I'm a mom first. I'm a caregiver. We literally raised 40 kids. The smartest thing I ever did.
Robin, you were featured in 2023's America's Best list for your sales production for doing over 268 transactions and over 91 million in volume, ranking you as the number 5 team in the state of Minnesota. Appreciate you joining.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So I was curious, you talk a lot about you're not salespeople, you're service providers. What does that mean to you?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I'll tell you, before I ever got into real estate, I worked for Mayo Clinic for 20 years. So I took care of people, and that is what I do naturally. I'm a caregiver, okay? And so I was actually recruited into real estate. I was speaking at a luncheon, and I was talking about a nonprofit that my husband and I ran, because that was another thing that we did, taking care of kids, right? So that's who I am. I mean, I'm a good caregiver. I'm a mom at heart, right? So this guy came up to me after the luncheon and he said, hey, Robin, I'm Jim Nelson. I really enjoyed listening to you talk. I want you to come and work for me. And I was like, really, dude? Did you listen to a word I said? I work full-time at Mayo Clinic. I have 2 kids of my own. I raise 6 kids at a time in addition to my 2, and you want me to come and work for you? Just when would I do that? He said, oh, I want you to quit at Mayo Clinic. And I said, what would I do? And I said, what would I do for you? And he said, well, I own Coldwell Banker, so you would sell real estate. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I'm not a salesperson. I don't even like salespeople. I could never be one, but thank you, I'm flattered. And he said, and honestly, that's the reason I want you, because I don't tend to hire salespeople. I don't tend to hire people who would focus on transactions or commissions. I tend to hire people who are going to take care of people, because then the byproduct is always going to be transactions and commissions. And I said, well, that makes it a little more desirable, but no, I'm still not interested. And eventually he got me, but it wasn't an easy win over. And boy, I'm sure glad he was persistent, because I've never looked back.
Nice. And I want to get to like the kids aspect, being the better neighbor in a second, but I want to touch on, what do you think helped you transition from Mayo Clinic? Like, what did you take away in terms of like the operations with your team, the transaction with clients, like that caregiver mentality? How did that kind of translate over?
Okay, so when I started, I wasn't a team. It was just, well, my husband was already in. He got in right before me, because when Jim kept trying to recruit me, I said, recruit my husband. He actually is looking for a career change. I am not. So he started before me, and to be truthful, I saw how successful he was and how much he liked his job, and I thought, I think I want to join him. So I did. But what I took is that, okay, I'm just going to do what other people aren't doing. I'm going to do the extra things. So I'll give you like a hardcore example. My very first sale, this lady called me, and she was a single mom. She had recently divorced, and she said, could you check with the sellers and ask them if it would be possible for me to stay overnight in the house, because I'm going to get in at like 3 in the morning and close at 8. And I'm like, okay, I can ask. And I'm like, well, where would you sleep? And she's like, on the floor. And I'm like, oh boy. So I called the sellers, and it happened to be my listing as well, which made it a little easier. And I said, would you guys be okay if she like pulled into the driveway and just slept in the moving truck from 3 until she got up at 8 and they said, oh, she can go in the house and she can sleep in the house. It's fine. So I said, okay. So I went in the house, took in an air mattress bed for her, an air mattress bed for her daughter. I made the beds. I put some milk and some juice in the refrigerator. I put cereal and donuts on the counter, set out my coffee pot so that when she got there, she had a place to sleep. I put shampoo and, did everything so that she could get up and take showers. I put towels in the bathroom. I went back to the office and they're like, are you crazy? Realtors don't do that. And I'm like, I do that. So I just, I did it my way, and I just did extra things, and word spreads fast. I mean, you take good care of people. They tell people. She was awesome. She went the extra mile. She did things for me that I would have never expected from my real estate agent. And then guess what? Referrals lead to referrals, lead to referrals, lead to, a lot of transactions. I think I've done something like 2,000 in the 23 years that I've been in the business. So
that's awesome. And do you think, because I've noticed a lot of times like teachers, people like sometimes in service industries or medical, when they translate over to real estate, they kind of take that nurturing aspect with them. And it sounds like that was kind of a big reason why you're able to separate yourself as an agent.
Absolutely. And some of my top agents on my team, one was a pediatrician in her prior life. Okay, so talk about a caregiver to the max.
Yeah.
One, right? I mean, she's an excellent agent, and she doesn't do a ton of transactions because she doesn't want to now. She's one step into retirement, but she's a very, very good agent. Cross every T, dot every I. Her clients love her. She just goes the extra mile, right? And I have a couple that have been in the service industry and like doing waitressing, serving, whatever the technology, the term for it is now, right? So anyway, terminology is what I meant to say. The servers come in and they take care of people. And I like that. I like that mentality. And I have had other people from the medical field, people that have been firefighters, first responders. I mean, those are the kind of personalities that really do well on my team, because we all have that. We go above and beyond, and we really, truly care about our people. I mean, our clients do become our friends. They really do.
So how do you, because when you're in sales and you're like a high performer, producer, like you can control yourself, you can control your output. But then when you start building a team, you start hiring, you start bringing on other people, it can sometimes be hard to translate those values, operationalize like those small differences that you do that someone else might not do. So how do you bring that and make it more of a team thing?
Andrew, that is a really good question, because I have never, first of all, when I got into real estate, I never planned on having a team. That was never part of my goal or my plan. And I have never one time advertised for a position. I've never said, I'm looking for somebody to join me. I've never gone and approached somebody and said, would you be willing to join me? What has happened is my team has just grown really organically. So people that I've done deals with, and I like the way they do business because it's similar to the way I do business. I like the way they go above and beyond to put the deal together. And if they come to me and say, I really enjoyed working with you, Robin. Do you have any room on your team? Would you meet with me? It's a yes. So it's like, if they were not the most top producing agent that I've ever met, but they're really, really nice, and I really like the way they take care of their clients, I'm interested in talking to them. If they're like the most top producing agent, but I don't like them, I'm not interested in talking to them, right? Because it's like, we have a culture. We have a really important, special culture on our team, and we all not only care about our clients, but we care about each other. We're respectful. We're nice. Nobody's backstabbing, backbiting. And we've had people like that on our team, but they were very short-lived. They did not fit our culture, and they're gone.
So kind of like hire and fire off values
Yeah,
and culture.
exactly. Yep, it is all about the culture. For me, I mean that when people say, "What's the difference?" Because I hear people all the time, like even people at like Remax Corporate say to me, "Your team is just special." Like they actually had me talk at a Teams convention once, Remax Teams thing, to say, talk about the culture of my team and why is it the way it is. But I think it's because we're really authentic, real people.
So talking like you would speak to a new agent on your team, or like if another team leader came to you and asked you, I want to have that culture. Like what goes through your head when you think, okay, I need to have my team members do the little things above and beyond? Like, do you map that out in your mind? Like, here's the transaction, like, here's points in where we can go above and beyond for the client? Is it just something intuitively? How do you kind of think through that?
Yeah, it probably is more intuitively than it is anything else. I just have a feeling, and it's questions I ask. If people sit down with me and all they're worried about is what's my split, how fast am I going to get my commission checks? And it's like, oh, okay. This is the person that in my mind is going to try to force a square peg into a round hole to get a deal done, to get a paycheck. And that is what absolutely tarnishes real estate, in my opinion. Okay.
Yep.
So it's like if the deal can come together and at the end of the deal, we have a happy buyer and a happy seller, not one realtor that muscled the other one over, right? And at the end of the transaction, the sellers feel good about what they sold their house for, the buyers feel good about what they paid for their house rather, then we have had a successful transaction. And it's the kind of people that like to do business that way that appeal to me. And you can pick up on that in a quick hurry.
Is there anything you ask in the interview to kind of gauge people in and out?
Yeah, like we'll do things. Like I said, I had worked at Mayo Clinic for 20 years, prior. And so there was a lot of like panel interviews. So we have what we call a leadership team here at the Gwaltney Group, and I'll bring that person. I'll meet with a person first, and if I have a good enough feeling about them, then I'll say I'd like you to meet with my entire leadership team, and we'll just ask questions like, we'll give them a scenario. This is what just happened. You just went to a walkthrough, and you got there, and the people are not out yet, and your buyers are so stressed out because their moving truck is ready to be unloaded. They're paying by the hour. Like, how are you going to help resolve this? And it's just interesting how much you can pick up by just the way, like some people can just pick, they can just answer quick on their feet. And others are like, oh my God, what would I do? That sounds horrible. And I mean, that's okay. It's an honest answer. But, if people are like, well, I don't see how that's my problem. Okay, well, that's not a fit for us, right? I mean, because clearly problem solving is the secret to success in real estate. It's all about, okay, when things don't go exactly the way they're supposed to, or we do hit a bump in that road, what are we going to do about it? So just those are the kind of questions we ask.
Nice. So you give them like situational questions
Correct.
and see how they do. There's, it sounds like you probably took that from corporate, because that's almost not even common sometimes in like smaller businesses to like ask situational questions. Like another thing that's very common is giving like homework or projects or assignments and seeing how they perform. Is there anything you do that? Do you do like a trial period? Like I interviewed someone, Ruth, in the Bay Area, and she puts people through her operations team for 2 years before they become an agent.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't go quite that. But we do have like a handbook, and in that handbook they have like shadow 5 open houses, and then they have a place to write notes about what did they learn at that open house, or did they how did they interact, or did they interact with any people that came through. So there's just like a whole kind of a training guide, but it's also to make them kind of aware of what they're doing and what they should be doing. And then like we have a big team, so they can, a lot of anybody on our leadership team is willing to mentor any new agent. So they can just look at their schedule and say, hey, Brett, I see you've got 3 showings this afternoon. Is it okay if I tag along? So we do that kind of thing. And again, we're here in Rochester, Minnesota, the home of the Mayo Clinic. Like I said, I worked there for 20 years, and it's a learning hospital, a teaching hospital, right? So like there's always a group of residents, and below them a group of medical students, and so we do the same thing. It's like level up and learn from those that know more than you and who've been doing it longer than you, and just share your experience. And it works for us.
That's awesome. That's a great analogy, and that's probably kind of what you took secondhand. It's like Mayo being such a huge learning facility, you incorporate that really heavily into your team.
And it was also, they also had a standard, they had expectations. And when people traveled from all over this country and countries throughout the world, they knew what they were going to expect when they got to Mayo. So I always tell my team, I want you to think of yourselves as we are the Mayo Clinic of real estate, okay? When people work with any member of the Gwaltney Group, they know the standard of care and service they're going to experience. And that's super important to me. It's a brand that, it's my name, but it's a brand that we've worked 20 plus years to establish. And, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but we've become a household name. Rochester is not big. It's only a little over 100,000. No matter where I go, honestly, I was at dinner last night, and the lady sitting next to me, she goes, "You're Robin Gwaltney, aren't you?" Yes, I am. She goes, "I bought a house that you had listed." Whatever. But it's just, people know, and so you do want to be proud of the way you treat people when you go into the community if people know who you are, right?
Yeah.
So we set a standard, we set expectations, we make it really clear to people that we're the nice guys. We're nice to our clients, we're nice to our colleagues, we're not the person that gets nasty on the phone or has quick, short temper or hangs up on other agents. I don't go for that. We're the nice people. People like to do business with us.
Nice. And I've heard you talk about like having that kind of like specialization, being really focused on like Rochester a little bit. And I want to get into that in a second, but I do want to ask, do you know EOS, like traction, rocket fuel?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you a visionary or an integrator?
Oh, big time. Yeah. Yeah. And so we actually did this when we were doing that. I had a guy, Joe Skyme, actually was our team manager at the time, and he moved on, has his own brokerage now, but he was really into that. So he introduced us to that. And he had me like forecast what my next 10 years were going to look like. And he's like, write down what your goals are, write down like where the team will be, where you'll be. And I found it like after the 10 years was done. And I was like, oh, okay, this is crazy stuff, because it was like right on the money. So, yeah.
So you're more of a visionary?
Yeah, I guess that's because I can see where the future is going to be, right? It's like I know where the team is going.
So the reason I ask is there's a lot of people, especially like in a sales industry like this, who are visionary, and you just become a high producer, and then having to kind of take a step back to, for example, build that training manual. Like,
I didn't build the manual. I have people that do it. Okay. I know what I know what I want them to have to do, but like I have people in place that do that.
That's where I was going to lead, is how impactful was it for you to get someone to build that manual for you?
Oh my gosh. The smartest thing I ever did, I started selling real estate full time January 1st, 2001. Okay. And I became really busy because, like I said, I went the extra mile. I did extra things. Right. And I would, back then, so sad and scary, but we didn't use the internet. We were selling, real estate out of these books. Thank God that was like going out when I came in. But I paid every Friday to put all my listings in the paper in full color. Nobody else was doing that, but I have a marketing background. So I'm like, I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to do it. And people would call me and want to list their house with me just because I was doing things that other agents weren't doing, right? I was spending money to make money. I was not afraid to do that. So I was getting busy fast. And like I said, I had 2 kids of my own and 6 other kids, so I had 8 kids at home. I didn't get into real estate till I was 38. So I wasn't a spring chicken, but I wasn't old by any means. I'm still not old.
Yeah, you're not.
But I was a busy person, and this gal, Kathy Enerson, who actually is on my team today, approached me and said, Robin, I think you need me. And I'm like, okay. And she said, I'm currently the personal assistant to Catherine Moe, who is the top producing agent here at Coldwell Banker, who I knew, of course. And she said, but Catherine is leaving because she's going to go to law school, and I would like to remain an assistant, and I want to work for another mover and a shaker, and I can see that's going to be you. So would you consider hiring me? And I was like, yeah. So I told my husband, I hired an assistant. He's like, you have had your real estate license for 9 months and you hired an assistant? I'm like, I need it. Well, honestly, that was like a pivoting point for my career, because she just could do all of those things. She used to describe it as, you go out and chop down the trees, I'll make the logs and stack them. I said, okay. So, and that was kind of how it went. You know, I went out and met people. I went to the listing appointments, and then I could just give her the paperwork, and she'd make sure the listing got in. She'd make sure the photos got taken. She'd make sure the disclosures got filled out. She'd do all the behind the scenes. So I've pretty much been spoiled with having a really good assistant since 9 months into the business.
Wow.
Now I have a personal assistant. I have a transaction coordinator for my buy sides, transaction coordinator for my sell sides, and I have a guy that handles all of our marketing / tech. So we have a really good crew. That's my behind the scenes, or I would be a hot mess, no doubt.
There, I noticed that you talk about how Mayo is really good with specializing and having that support staff behind the scenes for you, and then you also saying, hey, we work in Rochester. How was that intentional? First question, that you're like, we're going to specialize, we're going to have a huge support team, or not a support team for the agents? Like, was that thought process?
Well, I think as I brought agents, I had to make sure that I could add value. If they were going to come to my team and I was going to get a portion of their commission, there had to be a reason. It couldn't be all about me. There are some team leaders that they lead a team, they don't sell any real estate, fine. You know, I can see where leading a team could be easily consuming enough to be a full-time career, no problem, right? But I love the selling and the listing, so I'm not going to stop doing that, not anytime soon anyway. Anyway, I guess back to my point is, if they're going to come to my team, I want to have value for them. So I want to be able to say, and you've got Tina to lean on, and Jenna to lean on, and Brian will help you with your marketing. So I provide that to everybody on the team, and it's worked really well. I mean, it's a huge value add. And I think if you ask any one of my team members, like, what do you like best about working on the Gwaltney Group? And you could take them one at a time, and they would say, the culture is amazing, and our support staff cannot be beat. So, I mean, it's been really valuable.
So you have a marketing background, and you talked about getting into things before everyone else, like the full print ads. You started your real estate talk show like 7-8 years ago now.
Yeah, something like that.
Started posting on YouTube. Were there any bad investments for you throughout all of this? Like, I'm going to do this, going to do this.
No, if it didn't work well, we just quit it, you know? So like, we do things like lawn service. Okay. So if you list your house with me and you move out because now you've taken a job elsewhere, and this happens a lot in Rochester, Minnesota, because somebody finishes their fellowship, they take a consulting job somewhere else, or, you know, doctors move. That's what they do. Nurses, everybody in the medical field. So if they leave and their home is still vacant, I say, don't worry about it. We've got you. So we're going to send a service over to mow the lawn. We're going to send a service over to plow the snow. We're going to do what it takes so that the listing looks fabulous. We're going to send somebody in every few weeks to make sure that there's no dead bugs. You know how vacant listings can be, right? So we keep them clean, keep them fresh, keep them nice. And they're always thrilled that we're going to do that. So last winter, we had already promised this to people, And it's really hard to find help these days,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can't even find contractors. Like you try to hire these snowplow guys and they really only want the commercial jobs. They want the parking lots at the big stores and like at the Remax office building, but not the clients' homes. So we literally kind of started our own little company so that we could keep fulfilling that promise, right? So we had agents or the son of one of the agents, and we bought a truck with the plow, we bought a trailer, we bought some snow plows, and so they would all just come together and get it done. But I said, if we can't provide the service and do a good job of it, then we have to just stop, right? So we just had that talk that this winter, if we don't have the manpower, we're not going to do anything halfway. We're not going to promise people we'll do it and then not do it. We'd rather not promise the service and then surprise them and do it when we can. So we just stay ahead of it, right? We just know what we can provide and that we have the ability to get the work. Like even if we say we'll find someone to clean your house for a move out clean, well, we had a couple people we could depend on. They both left that career and we had to stop offering that. We'd say we can help you try to find someone, but we just have to stay on top of what we can offer. And it's changed a lot. Since COVID, it's different world. It's a different world.
So I've seen that concierge level service in some other teams, and it kind of all varies sometimes. Like that list of services that you provide, like one, do you kind of bake it into the contract and pay at closing depending on if it's like a big job or something, or like is that just a cost that you guys incur?
It's a cost that we incur.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you just said it's an investment basically, and that's...
It is. It's just going the extra mile. I mean, this is why 71% of my business, right, is from people that I have taken care of before or they've referred me to somebody, right? So it's, if you take good care of people, people will get good care of you. I mean, it's just the way it is. We've built a great reputation for doing all the extra stuff, and people say, you're stupid, you're cutting into your profits. And I'm like, no, I mean, that's your way to look at it. And I'm not going to criticize the way anybody else does business. Like a lot of team leads will criticize me because they think I'm too generous with my commission splits. But there's also a reason that nobody leaves my team unless we ask them to, right? I mean, if they're sour grapes and they ruin our beautiful culture, we just say, kindly, you can go. You don't fit here. But otherwise, nobody else leaves. They stay,
So I'm guessing in the listing presentation, you have, this is kind of what we do differently. We'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this.
Right. And so we were providing, I mean, way back 20 something years ago, my photographer would do videos. Now, granted, they are not as good as videos today, but we were providing videos. And then there was a time where I partnered up with Ari Colas. He owned Apollo Liquors at the time. And I said, Ari, let's do some marketing together. It'll be fun. And he's like, well, what are we going to do? And I said, you're a wine expert. You know everything about wine. I know a lot about houses. So let's do a little thing where we would set up a table in a listing. And I would start out with saying, if this house were a wine, what wine would it be? So he would start with, oh, this house is very oaky, it's very airy, it's very, whatever. And so then he would come up with a wine. And it was kind of a fun little thing that we did. And he would use it on his website. I would use it on my website. But we were doing this way before all the big talk about video, right? So we always tried to be like brochures. When I got into the business, people would just simply print whatever came out of the MLS and leave it lay on the counter in the house. And I think we can certainly do better than that. So, we would create a nice brochure with photos, and we would use hard stock paper and just little things that made a difference. And so we quickly became the people to list with because we did more.
So I want to dive into that a little bit. So the new segment that I told you, draw your lead source. Can you break down your 91 million in percentages where that business comes from?
Yes, I can. And I had those notes, but I shut it because I didn't know you were going to ask me, but I just looked at it. So I think I can recall it. I think it was like 43% is my sphere. So just people that I know, right? And that started when I started. Like, I'd sit next to parents at my kids' events, right? So it's just people I know. And 17% was kind of unidentified, but otherwise everything was accounted for. And I think it was like 15% came from leads, but otherwise past clients and referrals. So, I mean, pretty much we're just doing it over. I counted one time recently 10 families where I've helped 3 generations.
Wow.
So, like, say I met the people when they were in their 40s and I sold them a house. And then they called me back 15 years later when they're in their mid 50s and they said, hey, our parents are going to move to town or they're going to go into assisted care. Can you sell their house? And then they called me back a few years later. Hey, our 25-year-old daughter is going to buy a house. So I counted at least 10 families where I've helped 3 generations. So to me, to be honest, it's all about the relationships that I build.
That's awesome. And so you said earlier about 70 to 71% total kind of comes from past clients, fear, referrals, etc. And then the other 30% is just other lead sources.
I think it was 13 or 17% was unidentified. So 13% was lead sources and the 71% was referrals. I mean, not referrals, but my clients telling their friends kind of thing. So past clients and sphere.
So you come from a marketing background, and I want to try to lay this out for like anyone who's watching easily.
Sure.
You can kind of click down whichever path you want. If we think of like your overall strategy, whether it's like your marketing strategy from like a yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, that's kind of one way to break it down. The other way would be like you have a listing and there's the before to get the listing prepared. There's the during, all the marketing that you do to sell it, and then the after to keep the client happy, follow up. Mm-hmm. Like, what goes through your mind on like a monthly, yearly basis when you think through what are we going to do consistently to get business from that 70%?
Okay. I like that. And I think the answer is really simple. It's just stay in touch with those people, stay in front of them, right? So I am constantly talking. So I have a Facebook group on my Facebook and I'm old, so you probably don't even do Facebook.
I have one.
I have a group that's just, that's just my Facebook clients. Okay. So it's like, I'm friends with my Facebook. I mean, once people become my clients, they become my Facebook friends if they want to. But then I have a special group where they're just my clients. So I tell them about things in the real estate market. So like I'll say, oh my gosh, did you see the rates went up again today? Or hey, did you see that the rates dropped? And I'll just send it to that group instead of plastering it all over my Facebook. But I stay really in close touch with them. I'm big into pop buys. So I have, Nothing Bundt cakes.
Yeah.
They came to Rochester, I don't know what it's been, 5 years now, but when they opened, I had been a fan from when I've been out of state and had it. So I went in and I said, I want to see you do well. I'd love to support your business. Can I just put in a standing order? I'll pick up 5 of the Big Bundt cakes every Friday. And she's like, oh my gosh. And I've been doing it since the day she opened. And then I pick them up and then I just randomly pick 5 of my past clients. And I send a text, hey, are you around? Could I stop by? And I just ring the doorbell. I give them a bundt cake. And I just sit and say, how are you enjoying the house? And not because I want to bribe them with the bundt cake, but because I want everybody to know about them. I think everybody does now, but when it was new, it was just kind of fun. But I just like to bring a treat. And I want my clients to always understand how important they are. Because guess what? Without my loyal clients, I have no business. I have no success. I have no number one team in Southeast Minnesota. It doesn't happen without the clients. So I like to make my clients know that they're really important. I also do that by giving a lot in the community. So I have different clients that are affiliated with different causes. And whenever they call me and say, will you buy a table at our function? Will you support this? Will you support that? Oh my gosh, if that's in our budget and I can afford to do it, it's an automatic yes, because I was raised, if you have enough to share, you share. And if this community is going to make me the number one real estate agent and team, you better believe they can count on getting it back in the way of sharing in the community. So it's really important, high priority.
So how come like, I might use the wrong words for this, but like the better neighborhood, the helping the kids, you started that early on, and you said even before you got into real estate.
Oh yeah, way before. It's called the Better
Better
Chance
chance.
program. So it's a national program called A Better Chance. Okay. And in Rochester, so the acronym for A Better Chance is ABC, right? And there was already an ABC Ability Building Center in Rochester. So when ABC came to Rochester, they just made it Rochester Better Chance. It just got shortened to Better Chance. Okay, so let me tell you just a short little
Yep.
bit about that. Back in the early late 60s, there were a bunch of Ivy League professors at a conference, and they sat around and talked about, isn't it kind of a shame that the elite education in our country is available to rich white kids, period? What can we do to change it? What can we do to change that? So they brainstormed and they decided, let's start a program like giving a hand up to some kids that are maybe living in the inner cities. They may be very poor. They may be kids who are going to some of the lousiest public school districts there are. But they have the ability and the brains and the desire and the drive to do well. So let's try to create something to help those kids and identify those kids. So they proposed this to like some of the high-end boarding schools, prep schools, and said if we went out and found kids of color, found kids with no economic means, would you consider scholarships? And they said, yeah, let's do it. So it started with just a few scholarships. It grew to every private school had scholarships available, and then it went into the public sector. So those same group of professors who had formed a board said, who do we know across the country? Who are our leads, right? Who do we know? Who can we reach out to? And so there was a doctor at Mayo. He has since passed. His name was Phil Brown. And Dr. Brown had graduated from Dartmouth. And one of his professors happened to be on this board. And he said, oh, I've got one of my students, former students, that's a physician at Mayo Clinic. I could reach out to him and see if he would be considered, if he would consider this. So he did that. And it was perfect because Phil Brown said, Rochester would be an ideal place for this, like very low crime, very, very safe, very good public schools. So they actually got a board together, a local board, and it was made up of some very successful real estate agents at that time. Now I was still in middle school or, high school when they started, probably middle school. I think they started it in the early 70s. So anyway, these people bought a house, and it was called the Rochester Better Chance House. And they had resident directors who would come and stay there. And they would bring these 6 kids in at a time. They'd bring in like 2 freshmen, 2 sophomores, and 2 juniors. Well, actually, I take that back. There weren't any freshmen in high school then. It was just sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So they'd bring 2 from each class level. And then those kids, if it worked for them and they were doing well, they would stay the 4 years until they graduated high school. And they would bring in new ones to keep it, rotate it through. So there were 6 at a time. And by the time we moved in, most of those resident directors stayed for like 1 year or 2 years. Because you can imagine living with 6 teenage boys. It's chaos. It's total chaos. I joke and say that's what actually trained me for real estate was all those years with 6 teenagers in the house at a time, right? It's running here, running there, 11 o'clock at night. Oh, Robin, can we go to Walmart? I need tag board. I'm supposed to do this. Oh, that kind of stuff. You were probably the kid that did that to your parent. Anyway, so the program has been very successful in Rochester. It's no longer here, but we moved in as the resident directors, my husband and I, in 1993. And at that time, our 2 kids were literally 1-year-old and 3-year-old. And they expected us to stay for a couple of years like all the other resident directors. But again, I'm a mom first, right? I'm a caregiver. I fell in love with these kids. So we literally stayed there and raised 40 kids. We stayed there for 17 years until our daughter graduated high school. So now they're not just kids that lived with us, they're our family. So we have this huge family. And when my daughter got married 6 years ago, I think there were like three of them that didn't make it to the wedding. One was stationed in Okinawa, one had a baby in the NICU, and the other one, I don't know. They were good excuses, right? So, I mean, we're a close-knit family, and people say, oh, you gave so much, because you live there for free, right? It's a volunteer position. And people say, oh, but you don't have the cost of living. Well, guess what? I wasn't the mom that would buy my kids the best of everything, and then the other kids went without. I spent a ton of money on that program, on those kids, but I did it because I wanted to. I mean, I loved those kids. And unfortunately, after we left, they realized that they didn't have the budget to run the program because so much of it actually came from us. So the program died out really quickly after we left. But I don't feel guilty because we did our time for sure. Like I said, the average family stayed 1 or 2 years and we stayed 17. And because of that program, we were named the Good Neighbor Award winners through the National Association of Realtors. So that's like a big deal. And we also won an award because we started our career at Coldwell Banker. We won Preserving the Trust. And that's like the highest award you can win at Coldwell Banker for the service you give to your community, the way you treat your clients, doing it the right way. So although I have all the great production awards and I have the pinnacle level at RE/MAX, which is the highest, and this year I'll win the Circle of Legends after 10 years here, which is the minimum time you can be. So I mean, I'm proud of all those production awards, but I'm mostly proud of those awards for doing things the right way, and I know that's what I owe my success to, for sure.
So most people don't say 17 years, and most people don't even do that. Why was it important to you?
I fell in love with kids. I couldn't turn my back on them. As a matter of fact, we thought we would once. We had been there about 6 years. We were outgrowing the space because when we initially moved in, our son and daughter had to share a bedroom. That was fine. They were 1 and 3. Yeah. Now they're 7 and 9, and I'm like, okay, this can't go on forever. Eventually, they got to have their own space. And so we thought, well, we'll just tell them it's time for us to go. So we told our kids first, and we said, we have to go looking for a house because we're going to move. And they're like, we need a big house, Mom. We have a lot of kids. And I was like, no, it'll just be me and Dad and you two. And they bawled because it was like telling your kids you're getting a divorce. They're like, what do you mean? We're not going to have our brothers anymore? I'm like, oh, I can't do it. It was hard enough for me, but now I could see what it was going to do to them. So I'm like, nah, we're going to stay. So I told the board, and they literally built an addition onto the house. I said, I feel like we're going to have to leave. It's going to be hard for our kids. They're like, listen, we can give you more space. And they built an addition on so that our kids each had separate rooms and put a big family room for all the boys. And anyway, don't need to go into that, but it was when we finally left, I couldn't even still leave. I ended up joining the board and staying on the board for 3 more years. But after 20 years of my heart and my soul and my dollars and just hours and hours of time with those kids, I don't regret a bit of it. I mean, I would do it over in a heartbeat. It was awesome. I feel like it built character not only for me, made our family relationship so tight, and made my kids be the awesome humans they are. And I haven't told you this, Andrew, but both of our kids work with us. So our daughter is our transaction coordinator on the buy side, and our son is one of our top producing agents, and he's only in his 2nd year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Family business. But that's huge, and that's obviously you got awards, but that doesn't matter in this sense. Like, it's just amazing of you to do something like that, and I think it speaks volumes to you. So
thanks. I was raised by good parents, and they were the kind of people that always had open hearts and open arms, and I feel very blessed that I got that from them.
So is that where it maybe comes from? Is your parenting, or the parenting that you got?
I say that affects, don't you think that affects our lives in a big way? Yesterday was my birthday, and both of my kids gave me birthday cards, and they wrote the nicest things, and they talked to me about, thank you for the great childhood that you gave me. Thank you for the way you raised me. Thank you for always taking my side. Thanks for letting me make my mistakes and helping me clean them up. I mean, I was just like, that's what it's all about. It's like the tools we can give our kids. And I'm very fortunate that my parents raised me that way. And I'm very grateful and thankful that I was able to raise that. My husband and I were able to raise our kids that way.
Yeah, and it seems like family is like a strong value for you, for sure.
Oh, huge. And I really, I mean, our tagline, I mean, like we really say we treat our team like family and our clients like friends. And that's not BS. I mean, our team is our family. I mentioned yesterday was my birthday. I came in, the team was all here. They had decorated up my office. They had streamers hanging. They had treats. I mean, it was just so sweet, flowers and cards. And they're not doing it to, suck up, whatever. They do it because they really care about me, and it shows. And they know I really care about them. I mean, we have a really awesome culture.
I have a question on that. There's a big thing in business right now. It might have got started from like Netflix. I don't know if you're familiar with the book No Rules Rules, from the founder of Netflix. But people are talking about, should a business be a family or should it be more like a sports team? And basically, for anyone watching, really quick on that is just, yes, you have that family aspect, but then there's also the performance side of the business that you have to think about. So I was curious to get your opinion on that.
Well, I think that the sports teams that are the most successful are the ones that have that like familial culture. Like some of those, you can tell that some sports teams really like each other. They really jive. They really respect their coach, their leader, and they're the ones that succeed. Is it because they have the most talented athletes? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of talented athletes, throughout the whole, whether it's the NFL we're talking about or MLB, whatever, but it's putting them together in the right environment, and they respect and like each other. And that was back to the kids we raised. I can't make kids like each other, but I darn well said, I have a rule here, and you will be nice to each other and you will respect each other, because I will not tolerate disrespect. I will not. Just like I would not tolerate that on my team. And I feel like the sports teams that are successful probably have very similar cultures, and granted, there are teams that do well and they've got just standout athletes, but there's always behind the scenes stuff that maybe you don't know about until it all gets exposed, falls apart. But yeah, I think that of course we talk about where are we with our numbers, where were we? We're a competitive bunch, but not against each other. We're competitive together. Like we want to rise to the top as a unit.
Nice.
Okay? We want to win the Super Bowl every year.
That's awesome.
And so far we do. So far we are always, we've stayed ranked as the number one team in Southeast Minnesota, and we continue to hold that. So I laugh because every realtor says, I'm number one, I'm the best. I'm just simply talking about the number of transactions and the volume we do. We are on top and have been for a long time and will be for a long time.
That's
awesome.
Our
plan.
I'm sure there's a lot of challenges and lessons being a parent to like 40 kids, and then also that probably translated a little bit into parenting of the team.
It translates a lot. I feel like I have the ability to read people. Like I can tell if you're on today or off, if something's bothering you, and I have the approachability to say, what's going on? Let's talk about it. And it might be something like, oh, I'm just so far behind where I was at this time last year, and I'm so frustrated. I said, well, let's talk about that. The whole industry is far behind where they were at this time last year. But let's think about what you were doing before you chose real estate. Like, were you making as much money on your best year then that you are now in this rough year? No. Did you have the freedom and the ability to be at all your kids' events and work? No. It's hard to, when people get really down, I can't stand it. And it's like, I really care, and I really want them to see the light and understand I'm a girl, I'm a glass half full girl, right? So things can be really bad, but I always want to focus naturally on what's really good. And so I think that's been really good for me, because I feel like I can turn people's, stress and kind of sadness or frustration into, I got this. And I think that serves me well with sellers too. Like when I started real estate, if you got your listing sold in that first 6-month contract, you were a rock star, okay? Because houses were taking a lot longer than that to sell. So I got really good at counseling, and what I found out, again, it's the simple things. Just talk to them. If you don't have any showings, still pick up the phone and call them. So I have one of these little things that I do. It's called my seller check-ins. So regardless if I have 14 listings or 35 listings, every one of those sellers gets a call once a week. And I shouldn't say a call because we talk about it at the time of listing, and if they prefer an email or a text, that's what they get. But I do a check-in, like, hey, I did get the feedback from the showing. I know you got it too. Do you want to talk further about that? Or, sorry, no showings this week, but don't feel bad. You're not the only ones. Just the communication. Because I think when people are interviewed and they're asked, like, what was the most frustrating part about selling your house or buying your house, it's the lack of communication. Like, just stay in touch with your people. It's basic.
It's kind of funny when you think of like most service-based jobs, and if you take everything away from it and you just strip it down to its core, like you have the service, but really what kind of ties it all together is what expectation does that person have of the service that they're going to get, and then are you able to deliver on it, of course, but then how do you communicate, keep that accountability, and communication's like that common thread no matter what.
It is. You are so right. And the expectations is huge too. Again, whether you're parenting, if you tell your kid exactly what you expect from them, then they can give you that. But if they have no clue, it's really tough. And if I bring a team member on and I say, this is what I expect from you. I expect to see you in the office. I expect you to shadowing other people. I expect you to take this playbook and follow it and take the notes. These are our expectations. And if I don't make that clear, then how do I expect them to perform and succeed? Right? So if I make those expectations very clear and see that they're still not interested, well, then it takes a little more coaching or momming or whatever you want to call it, and I'm just very grateful that communication is, a strength for me,
with
for sure.
So many agents, how do you keep, like, you have agents, you have clients, like you have your kids. How do you keep your agents accountable? Because it's such an up and down business. The market goes up and down. Like, how do you deal with that?
Right. So what I care about, if you say, you're saying keeping them accountable, like I know there are some team leads that have like performance, you have to sell this many houses. I don't have that. You know what? You need to sell as many houses as you need to sell. So if you're comfortable selling 10 houses a year, good for you. If your lifestyle says you need to sell 40 houses a year, or that's just your drive or whatever it is, then that's what we sit down and we have meetings. Like, let's meet, halfway through the year. We meet at the beginning of the year. What are your goals? Let's write these down. How are you going to achieve them? Now let's meet at the end of the first quarter. Where are we at? Are you on track? What are we going to do to change it? So, I believe in holding people accountable to their own goals, not to mine.
Yep.
Does that make sense? I want them to tell me where they want to be. I don't want to tell them what they have to do, other than be nice and be respectful.
So it sounds like your system of accountability is you figure out what their goals are, get them to, whether it's write it down, put it down on paper, and then you have quarterly or monthly or just...
And those meetings can be with me or any member of the leadership team. Because, sometimes they'll just really click. Like some people, some of the younger agents especially, really click with my son, who is a part of our leadership team. And they say, you know what, I had my meeting with Brett. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Great. And our leadership team meets every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. So we talk about, hey, I just had this meeting with so-and-so. This is where he's at or she's at. So communication. I think that's what sets us apart, is we just communicate at all levels, whether it's between me and the transaction coordinators or the other agents. And we have so many great systems in place, again, which I have zero responsibility for because I didn't put any of them in place, but I know what we need. And then I find the right people to do it. Right. So we have great systems in place, and the communication between the agents themselves, the agents and the I don't want to call them staff because they're part of our team, but the transaction coordinators, the marketing guy, the office help at the front desk, the communication between our agents and their clients, all of that is what's first and foremost, and the rest of it just falls into place. But you're right, I'm busy. I told my husband the other day we were on a walk because we're doing this 10,000 steps a day, no excuses, no matter what it is. Sometimes it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, I have to go walk 3,000 more steps or whatever, but it's just a personal goal and I won't not do it. And so I was telling him the other day on a walk, I said, I'm a little jealous of you because you can just go on a walk, put your headset in and walk. I am watching my texts. I'm on the phone. It's like there's no real free moments in the day for me, but I thrive on it. So I'm not really complaining. I love it. Like my first text in the morning will sometimes be 6:30 and people are like, oh my God, do you get upset? I'm like, no, my clients are my friends. They know I'm up early. I don't care. They know that I'm going to get her before she gets too busy, right? And sometimes my last ones are at 10:30 at night. And people say, oh no, Robin, you got to tell people you only work 9 to 5. And no, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a doctor. I honestly work when my clients need me, right? So I'm a service provider. So I guess when I tell you I'm a service provider and not a salesperson, that's what I mean. It's the way I approach it, and my clients know that I'm here for them when they need me. And my team has the same attitude with their clients, and they know that's our culture. That's our reputation. That's our brand. That's the way we do it.
I imagine that because being always on could come at a cost, especially someone who's really busy, like with your family. There's really no separation with business and work. It's more like...
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, because people say, can you talk about the work-life balance? I'm like, there's no such thing. Real estate is my life. My family is my life. It is all integrated. And I'm going to tell you, I lost both parents last year, but we were the primary caregivers for both of them, my husband and I. So I wanted them to move in with us, but my dad was like, absolutely not. We're not going to invade your space. When you're home and you have some time, that's your space. So I wouldn't take no for an answer, but my dad is twice as stubborn than I've ever been. So I ended up knocking on my neighbor's door and saying, Steve, I need to buy your house. And he's like, excuse me? I said, I need my parents to live here because it's like 10 steps from your front door to my front door. It's one level living. We can remodel the bathroom, put in one of those walk-in tubs. I need this house. I said, you name the terms, you write me a letter, you tell me what it's going to take. My parents are going to move here. He's like, okay. So I bought that house. My parents moved in. And in the beginning, it was like, they were just perfectly fine on their own. Like I would bring groceries. Sometimes we'd cook and have dinner with them. And sometimes I would just sit and watch TV with them. But then as the years went by, it changed. And so at the end, we were there all the meals with them. And then, because my mom had dementia and it was a lot for my dad. And then, but I'm still doing my work. They know. And I have to tell you a funny story about that. But so my mom passed first, and then we literally moved in with my dad. So we didn't move our stuff in because our house is right next door, but we slept in the other bedroom and we stayed with him. And then during the day, my husband would stay home and work from home, and I would go and work. So I have I always prioritize, and my family is always first, but my work is a really close second, and I've been able to just integrate it. And I'm not joking when I say that my years at Rochester Better Chance helped me with that, because listen, we had 6 teenagers and 2 toddlers. Then we had 6 teenagers and 2 elementary kids. And then we had 6 teenagers and 2 middle school kids. And then we had 8 high school kids, and 8 high school kids that were super, like they were involved kids. So they were in sports, they were the president of this, and they were in the National Honor Society, they were in choir. So we were figuring out, you go to the first half of the soccer game, I'll go to the first half of the football game, you go to the conferences for this too, I'll go to the, we were able to multitask. And never did my parents not know even though they were younger and healthier, that they were my priority. And never did my kids not know that they were my priority. And never did my clients feel unimportant. I was the one that lacked. I mean, here I am, zero makeup, never been a makeup girl. Half the day, my kids will look at me and go, Mom, you're going like that? I'm like, whatever. So you got to give somewhere. And so now my new leaf, now that my parents have both passed and they're not my priority anymore, I said, it's time to make me my priority. So this is where the 10,000 steps and the taking better care of me and doing more for me is coming into play. But I don't know. I think I've been really good at just integrating it all and realizing this is my life. There's no work-life balance to me.
I 100%
it's all one
agree,
thing.
because it's like just the word balance makes it think like it has to be 50-50, and that's impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not realistic.
So, curious on that, because you achieved all these levels of success, you like in business and outside of business. Sometimes it's easy, I shouldn't say it's easy, or sometimes when you're going for something in business, you can accidentally sacrifice your family. And how did you make sure that family was number one and you didn't sacrifice necessarily on either side?
I've always been really a straight shooter. I'm really honest, right? So like if somebody said to me, hey, Robin, is there any chance you could show us houses on Saturday? I would say, I've heard trainers say, oh, just tell me you have other appointments. I'm not a liar. Never been a liar. I would say, all right, this is the deal. Brett's in a baseball tournament. His first game is at 1 o'clock. That'll last until about 3. I'd be available like 3:30. And then, I would just tell them my real life, and they're like, okay, yeah, cool, perfect. Like, because most people want you to care about your family, and most people want you to have a life. And what I have the glory of is that I'm successful enough that if people are saying, oh, I'm the only thing that matters, guess what? I'm not their agent, and I have no problem telling them that. So like if I have to take when I had to take my parents to doctor's appointments and I had to say, you know what, no, my dad has a procedure, I will be there with him. And if they say, well, I need to see it today, I do have the privilege of saying I have a large team, somebody else on the team can help you. And if they're like, oh, Robin, yes, that's perfect, no problem, great. If they say, I want you, I hired you, bye-bye now, because you can't be ahead. You'll never be more important to me than my family.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is because I know someone who's a very nurturing person, like very nurturing. So I was curious because you have kind of like that very nurturing trait. And it could sometimes be seen, people can see like it in a fear-based way of telling a client, hey, I can't do this because I have my family. So that's why they come up with these other reasons versus telling the truth.
Yeah. Well, and some people just aren't as, like I said, I think if you've been in those conferences where they say, what's your superpower or whatever. And I think mine is that I'm just able to connect with people. Like seriously, I can just get to know them. I'll never say, hey, my kid's game is way more important than you, because the truth is, if we're on they've got a short window of time and they've got to get this house. It's like, hey, Brett, sorry, I can't come to your game today because these people are, it's called prioritizing, right? Each day the priorities change. I make a lot of, comparisons to the clinic, but I did work there for 20 years. I compare it to the emergency room. So like if I have somebody that says to me, I was waiting for a call back to find out when we could do this or that. I say, I'm really sorry. I want you to think about this. All of my clients are equally important, but you have to deal with the heart attacks first, and the stitches are going to have to wait a minute. It's just the way it is. So I'm really good at prioritizing what has to, like if we're in the middle of negotiations, that's first, right? And if you want to know, do you think we should take new pictures of the bedroom now that I put new carpet and painted the walls? It's important, and I'll come and I'll answer your question, but it's going to be, in the right order. And I'm also really good about like explaining to my clients, I'm working even when I'm not on the phone with you, even when you don't see what I'm doing for you, right? And so that's why I do the 1-week check-ins. That's why I try to communicate really well. So people get to the point where they're like, oh, you got my back. I have 100% faith and trust in you. I'm good. And so when I can get to that, that's when you can balance, prioritize, whatever word you want to use so that you can make it all come together, right? And you can be successful at being a great mom, being a great daughter, being a great sister, being a great friend, and being a great team leader, and being a great realtor to my clients. And I take great pride in all of those things because they're all super
That's
important
awesome.
to me.
So, where's your head at in the future? Like, where are you looking towards now?
That's so great. So I mentioned that my son is working with us. He's 34 and he is a chip off the old block. He is so much like me. I mean, he is just, some days I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like I have a clone. This is awesome. You can just take care of my clients. You know, my husband and I worked together as a team for a long time, but we're very different styles. You know, our clients would receive us very differently. He does better with some personalities and I do better with other personalities, but Brett's a lot like me. So from the time he was in college, I said, Brett, you should join me. You'd be a great agent. Mom, that's your gig. You do your thing. I'll do mine. So he became a corporate finance guy, worked for IBM for 10 years, 9 years, I think. And finally, after COVID and having to work alone in his basement, he's like, I had enough of this, right? I'm done. Mom, I think I'm going to come and work for you. And I was like, yes. So now, if he had it his way, I would just step aside and he would just take over. But I'm not ready because I love what I do. But it is really reassuring to know that when we are ready, you know, our son and our daughter both work with us. They're both such integral parts of this team. They're highly respected and liked amongst the rest of the team members. So I think we'll be able to just step right out and they'll just take right over. But it ain't going to be anytime soon. I told them I'm kind of a goal setter, right? And so there's a goal at Remax. You have to do 10 million in commissions and work there at least 10 years. Well, since I came to Remax pretty darn late, I said, well, I can't mess around. I got to do that in 10 years. And then that's the circle of legends. Well, I'll complete my 10th year and I will be a member of Circle of Legends. I've already completed the commission part. So now the next goal at Remax is 20 years and 20 million. And I said, I'm a goal setter. You know, like I said, I projected where I'd be in 10 years, where the team would be. So I said, I got to do my 20 years and 20 million. After that, I might be ready to step aside. So I got a good 10 years in me,
nice.
for sure.
I have family outside of Minneapolis. We've been to Minnesota quite a few times as a result. I know that people from Minnesota tend to come down to Florida, I live in Tampa, Florida. The reason I'm asking is, like, are you trying to expand your team outside of Rochester, or are you just like, let me build there?
So, because that's a big thing now, big buzzword, expansion teams, right? And for me, it would be Arizona, because I love Arizona. I love Scottsdale. And I actually have a good friend, Don Matheson. He's a good, very successful Remax agent in Scottsdale. And he says, whenever you're ready to come to Scottsdale, you can work with me. So I could see me being licensed in Arizona and spending a few months at a time there, right? While these guys have everything going on here. I'll never move away. I don't have birth grandbabies, right? But I have all my grandbabies from the Rochester Better Chance house. And we have enough of those kids that live locally that I have grandkids locally. I have them all over the United States, but I have some locally. But I can tell you right now that when my kids have grandkids, I'm not the woman that could live out of state, okay? Maybe in their basement, but not out of state, you know? So, but I'll always want to get up and go places. So right now, I don't even want to go. I like to go a lot, but I don't like to go for long. So I like to go 3 nights and 4 days, and I don't really miss a beat, and I'm back in it. I don't like long vacations. I start to get anxiety about everything I should be doing and, you know, need to be doing at home, but I still like little getaways. Just more of them, shorter time, that works really great for us. But eventually, we'll probably have a place in Scottsdale and spend, you know, a month or two at a time.
That's
we'll
awesome.
See.
So maybe small expansion team there, or just maybe just a vacation home.
We'll just see how it works, you know, because I probably won't be able to start stop working. I do have a team member who is up in the metro area, up in Minneapolis, or in St. Paul, actually. And it's kind of fun because you talk about sports teams, and we kind of have that mentality. He actually was a professional football player. Okay. His name is Michael Floyd. And he played for Notre Dame, broke all kinds of records. Then he was drafted first round to the Arizona Cardinals and played there, lived a little fast and furious, got himself into a little bit of trouble. But, he's a great guy. Now he's on track. And, you go from 0 to 60 and, basically, right? You go from a kid in the Twin Cities who grew up with nothing to all of a sudden this superstar. Can come back at you, but he's just a great guy. He has that real true sense of team. He fits our culture amazingly. And so he was introduced to me and he wanted to join my team, even though I'm in Rochester, which is, quite a distance. We're an hour and a half away from St. Paul, but we've made it work. So because we work for RE/MAX Results, it is the number one largest and best franchise that RE/MAX has, in my opinion. And, the number one as far as size and agents and offices, that's a fact, but best is my opinion. Anyway, so he has an office up in the cities, which is great because now when any of us have somebody from Rochester that's going to go up to the metro area, we say, oh yeah, we have a team member up there. So we have a little mini expansion team, but we also have just great contacts. One of my nephews and his wife work for the same brokerage for RE/MAX Results, so we've relied on them. Some of my best friends work now. I've met them through RE/MAX Results. So we've got connections everywhere and connections all over the United States, because the way RE/MAX works is we do a great job of networking. We go to these elite retreats or these luxury meetings or these team meetings or R4, and we make real friendships. And so we can refer business all over the country. And that's also I do a lot of that. I get a lot of referrals from other RE/MAX agents. I send a lot of outgoing referrals. So that's been a big part of our business.
So would you ever expand to St. Paul, open up an office there, or not really?
Yeah, I think, we wouldn't open up an office, but we'll grow instead of just Michael. I already have a couple people in mind. One of the young men that we raised at the RBC house lives up there with his wife in Edina. They live in Edina, and right now she's a stay-at-home mom. But when her kids get a little bigger, she can see herself joining us and then working in the same office as Michael. So, yeah, and I think by that time we'll be able to use Michael as kind of our team lead up there. So, yeah, who knows what'll happen. Like I said, I never planned on having a team. And if anybody would have said to me, when I first started, someday you'll have the biggest and most successful team in all of Southeast Minnesota, I'd have been like, easy there. But it happened organically, and it's just right. It feels right. So I guess we'll just see what happens there as well.
What does great leadership mean to you then?
Giving them my all. I'm super invested in my team. They matter to me. Their happiness matters. During COVID, I remember this is one thing I did. I did a wellness check. So every week I made sure to have a 30-minute conversation with every team member. And I would ask them the questions. How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing physically? And how are you doing financially? What can I do to help you? Because it's really important to me that you remain good. You need to stay good. You need to be, because people had family members sick or, people they haven't seen in a long time, and they needed to talk about it. So I just made sure that every one of my team, I had nothing to do but sit on the couch and hang out with my mom and dad and watch every single episode of Walker, Texas Ranger that's ever been made. But I made sure to just touch base and ask the hard questions, like, how are you doing? And what can I do to help you? And so I think, and they know that it's coming from my heart. I've had them come and say, Robin, would you be able to help me with this, or could you do this? And they know the answer is yes. It's always yes. I feel, and I have a good leader, because John Colopy, who owns RE/MAX Results, is a fabulous leader, and he makes me feel appreciated every day, and it means the world to me. And so I follow his lead, and I make sure that my team feels appreciated every day, and that's really important to me. Probably more important to me than it is to them.
It's always the small things that go the long way. So,
Hmm.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it, and appreciate you joining and sharing everything that you've learned. You have an amazing story, and you're an amazing leader. So
Oh, thank you. Thanks for